Hmm. Oh. Something's missing. Ah, there it is. Aloha! Welcome to this week's video. So I'm going to be finishing up the leo mano this week. And there actually isn't too much left to do. I just need to lash it and lash the wrist strap and the feathers into the wrist strap and testing. So I'm super excited about testing. So it should be a pretty fast video. I haven't covered too much of the lashing, so I thought I'd cover a little bit more of it this time. What I'm doing here is I'm just prepping the end of this cord here. It's a waxed cordage, but I like to super glue the end, and that kind of stiffens it up and makes it so that it's easier for me to thread the shark teeth and lash them into place. It takes quite a while to lash. A piece like this is fairly simple, so the shark teeth will only take about 40 minutes to an hour, and then another 40 minutes to an hour to lash in the wrist strap and the feathers. Some of the larger pieces that I've made have taken a lot longer. I think the longest amount of time I've spent on lashing teeth was probably 4 or 5 hours, plus extra hour and a half for the wrist strap. So a good 5-6 hours, maybe 6.5 total. Pieces like that, sometimes I won't test just because the amount of time it would take to repair it if I break it is ridiculous. So traditionally, when they would lash the teeth like this, and there's a few different methods of lashing the teeth, but usually they would only lash 1 or 2 of them in a set. I tend to lash either the whole thing all the way around, or I'll do one half section at a time. The reason why I don't lash 1 or 2 teeth at a time is just because I like less knots in going around. I like it to look cleaner. The downside is if I do break a tooth and I have to fix it, I have to redo the entire lashing either all the way around or on half of the piece, depending on how I lash that one together. But that's why they would do it 1 tooth at a time or 2 teeth at a time, is so that they could, if one broke, it's a lot easier for them to take that one off, lash a new one into place, and they're good to go. I had quite a bit of excess cordage here. I don't usually have that much. I'm usually a little bit better at guessing how long I need. This time was quite a bit off. I'd prefer have longer than I need, so that I don't have to try to knot one together and have a knot in the middle of the piece. Last thing that I do is I just tie off the ends, and then I just push the small pigtails of the ends into the piece. I never cut completely to the knot. Whenever you do that, it kind of weakens the knot. It's better to have a little bit of an end left on the knot and then tuck that in than it is to cut that tail off right at the knot, because then it just comes undone and doesn't hold together. So the cordage that I have here is actually the same cordage from lashing the teeth. I just did a fold and twist multiple times, so it's about a 4-ply, or no, it's probably like an 8-ply now, and that's just to thicken it up. And then I'm going to lash these 2 ends together. So you can see I've got a loop on one end, and then I'm going to wrap the lashing all the way back up it. When I do this though, I keep it extremely tight. I'm pretty much pulling it as tight as I can. It actually kind of is painful on my fingers. I could probably wear like gloves or something and it'd be less painful, but I don't know, I do it anyway. And once I get to the end here, I'm going to thread that tail through the loop, and then I'll pull the other end of the tail on the other side. So right there, I'll pull that, and that's going to pull that loop through and tighten in that knot. And then so that one loop, the one tail that I pulled through the loop becomes like a stopper, so that you can't pull the loop all the way through, and it makes for a good hold. On this section of it, I won't tie a knot in it. When I do the feathers, I will, and that knot will help lock it into place. What I'm doing here is after I cut off the end, I'm super gluing it, and then I'm going to get my heat gun and melt it together. I do that just to make sure that that is nice and solid. So I've already gone ahead and glued the feathers into place, and now I'm going to lash them. So I do that to make it easier to lash. You wouldn't necessarily need to, and traditionally they might not have done it this way. They might have just lashed them, but this makes it a little bit easier for me to get the lashing in place. And I'm going to do the cords the same way here that I did just a minute ago on the wrist strap. So I have a loop on one end, and I'm just tying it all the way around. This is kind of a challenge though, because it does need to stay extremely tight, because I'm stacking the lash on top of itself. And so if it's not tight enough, when you go to pull it tight, it's just going to squeeze into itself, and it doesn't work very good. But I just keep tension on it, and it works fine. So once I get it all the way up to the top here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut off a little bit of that extra. I'm going to pull that through that loop. The difference is though, is I'm going to actually tie a knot. And so the reason why I tie a knot on this one is because there's going to be more potential for strain, and I don't want that loop, when I pull it tight, to come loose. And so that knot will kind of lock everything into place. And then I cut just the end off of the pigtail, so there's still a little bit left, and then I put that into place. So that's what I'm doing there with the needle, is that little pigtail that was left over, I'm just tucking that in. So now on this back side here, I'm actually going to lash this section to either side of the wrist strap. And what this is going to do is it's going to tie the whole thing together so that the feathers are lashed to the wrist strap. Otherwise, you could potentially just pull the feathers straight off, because right now, I mean, they're tight. It'd be a challenge to pull it straight off, but you could. So this lashing here locks it into place and makes it so that none of it's going anywhere. It's all going to stay there, and it's going to be nice and tight and hold strong. And then once I finish that, I go ahead and just tie in that pigtail into the lashing that makes it disappear. So here's the finished piece. This is in the natural light. Man, the curl on this piece was absolutely beautiful. It goes the entire length of the piece, so it has some nice, beautiful figure as well, and contrast in colors in the koa. But that curl is just gorgeous. It's kind of like a micro curl, small ripples that go the entire length. But I loved it. It just looked absolutely amazing in the light. I was super excited to test this piece. It felt really good in the hand. I felt like I could really swing with it, and so I'm definitely going to be testing on some Ballistics Gel and some pineapple and a melon. So first up is the Ballistics Gel. I'm going to do 2 strikes, a forehand strike and then a backhand strike. So the forehand strike, I'm just going to go for power, and then the backhand strike, I'm going to try to index and go for a more accurate angle. What's crazy is whenever I strike with it, it never feels like it has that much resistance, but man, does it cut deep. I mean, look at that. Like, that is a nasty cut into the Ballistics Gel. Oh man, that would just slice someone open. That's crazy. So here's the backhand. So here I'm going to be indexing in and trying to hit a specific spot. I hit exactly where I wanted to. I wasn't as deep, probably just because I wasn't as far into it, but it still sliced right through. Any direction you hit with this is just, oh man, on soft tissue, it's just going to cut right through. So here's a pineapple. So pineapples are fun because, one, they explode. But primarily because they're a good test on the teeth to see how well they hold, because the shell of the pineapple is pretty stout, but it just sliced right through. I mean, look at that. Just completely destroyed it. So now I'm going to do a strike with the end of the leo mano, and it just pierced right into the melon. Melons, though, aren't, I mean, they're stout, but they're not really that stout. You'd probably have to hit quite a bit harder if you wanted to strike someone in the head with this. But even if it didn't stab in, it's still going to cause some damage. And then a final strike just to finish it off. I hope you enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun. It's a beautiful piece. Function tested perfect. I had no damage. I'll see you next time. If you liked it, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. Mahalo plenty for everyone that watches. Aloha.